Is this thing on? It's on. Hi, welcome everybody. We're so excited that you could join us here at the Jim Henson Studios, which is formerly the Charlie Chaplin Studios. This is a really historic location, and I hope you have a chance to walk around and take pictures, because we're not generally open to the public, but it's a historic site where so many brilliant things were done. When Charlie Chaplin made his movies, this was once upon a time an open-air stage before sound stages. So that's how, before sound, that's how historic this place really is. We have a really great morning for you, and hope that you're excited to get to meet our show creators. We have the best of the show creators here today, so you can meet them and really, see them up close, ask your questions, and also something that we never get to do is showcase our curriculum advisors, because we have such great learning in our shows, and we want to talk to you guys about how it's done. So, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our moderator for the day, our Executive VP of Marketing and Educational Initiatives, Nicole Goldman.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. As Lisa said, I'm Nicole. I'm the head of our marketing and PR here at the company, and I also want to just take a quick moment and thank Dorian Davies. She was on our digital puppetry rig this morning. Oh, there she is, doing Lulu from Word Party. Thank you for that, and we'll be seeing some more magic from Dorian today, so thank you so much, Lulu. It's true joy to really work here with the folks that you're going to be meeting here today. We have our educational advisors as well as the creators behind some of the shows that you know and love. And we're also here today to talk about the Henson Family Hub. This is a site that we created with the goal of establishing an online community for parents, grandparents, people who have children in their lives, and people who are fans of the kind of content that we create. So you can visit the site, you can follow us on social media, and we hope that you'll come with us to celebrate the shows that you know, maybe learn about shows that you have yet to discover, share your experiences as parents. We here, a lot of us are parents as well, so we're right in the thick of it. And it's a little bit of what we're also doing here today. So you'll hear about shows you recognize, maybe some shows that you didn't know that came from us, and we're also planning on hearing lots of questions. So please keep that in mind. We're hoping this is an interactive discussion. Everybody here is happy to, meet and hear what you want to share with us as well. So without further ado, I would love to get our first panel started. We're going to be talking this morning about our curriculum. And I'd like to start by inviting my colleague, Hallie Stanford, up here. Hallie is our Executive Vice President of Children's Entertainment here at the Jim Henson Company. Right now, today, we have 8 preschool shows that air somewhere in the U.S. every day in somebody's home. And all of those shows, Hallie is an executive producer on. So chances are, if you're watching our preschool shows, you're watching one of Hallie's shows. She has received multiple Emmy nominations and Kids Screen Awards and Parents' Choice Seals and highest honors from Common Sense Media, and is also fiercely supportive of the creative people that she works with and incredibly loyal to the preschool audience that we're serving at home. So please welcome Hallie Stanford. Did it work? Your mic is on.
It's on.
Oh,
great.
Great.
And the other thing that Nicole didn't mention, which I'm happy to mention, is that I'm a mom. I have a 6-year-old named Theo, and I have a 19-year-old named Max, who was one of the original inspirations for Sid the Science Kid, and now Sid's off to college. And so we'll see what Theo inspires coming up.
Right. So we're going to welcome up the other members of our panel here, and property that we're going to represent is Julie's Green Room. Will you tell us a little bit about Julie's Green Room, and then we'll watch a little bit?
Yes. Well, first of all, Julie Andrews, you can't begin to imagine how much I love her so much. She was a great, huge influence on me as a kid. I aspired to be Maria, and look, I kind of grew up to be one, with song and dance and inspiring children. So Lisa Henson and Julie Andrews have been old family friends, and Julie came to our lot looking, is there a way that we can all work together? She had some ideas about ways we could, and they didn't quite seem right. And again, because this is a curriculum panel, let me just say that one of the places we usually start when we create preschool programming is the takeaway message, the education. What's missing out there for kids? What do they need to help inspire wonder in them? And you know what we felt was missing? The performing arts. That there was nothing that seemed to be on the air or even in the schools that was advocating. Performing arts, extracurricular activity, right? You can sign up for it in STAR, after school program. But was it something integrated in their experience? We didn't see it, and we certainly didn't see it on the air, and we thought, who better to represent the performing arts than Julie Andrews? And so together with Julie Andrews and her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton, conceived of the show Julie's Green Room, which is about Julie Andrews herself being a artistic director of a community theater, and this is her after-school program with kids, these puppet kids that we'll show a clip of, and they are putting on a musical, and within each episode you're going to learn a different performing art. I think that it's important to...
It's a fact. The man is named Dennis, imagine the Dennis, a whacker who's totally whacked. Oh, it's a way to spend the day pretending when you act.
I couldn't agree with you more. Do you mind, please? When you act, it's a whole other world when you act. You can be many things, you can be anything you could dream of, it's a fact. A princess, a fairy, a monster that's scary, a guy with a hunch in his back.
Oh, it's a way to spend the day pretending
When you act,
oh, when you act, oh, when you act.
you know there are so many parts to play.
A cat named Sylvester,
And yeah,
Uncle Fester,
a Pooh Bear, who bother?
or an aging Godfather.
A funny girl named Fanny.
Tomorrow, I'll play Annie.
But really?
I look great in a wig. When you act,
When you act,
when you act,
when you act,
it's a whole other world when you act.
when you act.
You can be many things, you can be anything you can dream of, it's a fact. A sinister villain,
Dreamer with
a
villain.
duck who was quick with a quack. Quack! It's the way you spend the day.
In fact, it is my favorite way.
It's the way you spend the day pretending when you act. Oh, when you act. Oh, when you act. Oh, Stella!
Wow! When you act.
Well, we're sorry we didn't show more of the kids, and you could check it out on Julie's Green Room on Netflix, but we just couldn't resist showing you Alec Baldwin and Julie doing a duet. We were so excited when she said she wanted to sing for the show, and then she's like, oh, I think I could get my friend Alec to do it. And we're like, Alec who? And she said, Alec Baldwin. We're like, what is happening? So that was exciting. But I would like to introduce Johanna Mackay, who we brought on board as our curriculum advisor for Julie's Green Room. She was there to advise us on all kinds of ideas for the show that could be taught to the kids, whether it was warm-ups or what kind of, how do you actually teach kids to handle costumes in the performing arts, as well as her taking a look at the material and making sure it was age appropriate. I met Johanna Mackay. Let me hit the microphone again and make your ears blow out. I met Johanna up at Idlewild Arts, which was a performing arts camp that I went up to since I was 9. And no, Johanna was not there. We're the same age. But let me explain when I met her. And it had such an influence on me, performing arts, like a profound. And so I go up to a family camp up there every summer. And Johanna is the director of the musical theater program up there. And she wrangles like cats hundreds of camper kids. And by the end, she is Miss Julie. By the end, she actually ends up putting on this fantastic musical with all these children. And it's a miracle, and we were like, we need the miracle maker, we need the real Maria to advise us how to put the show together. And luckily she's here in LA. So this is Johanna Mackay from Julie's Green Room.
What's that?
And that's a whale that lives in the lighting.
Marine biology show.
I'll turn it on again. Is that better?
There you go. Okay.
There you go.
Well done.
Great.
Thank you.
Oh.
Figuring that out. Is it me? No. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly about Sid the Science Kid, because that's another show we want to make sure we talk about in terms of curriculum. Do you want to tell us about Sid?
Hopefully you all know the premise of Sid the Science Kid, and I'll let the clip pitch our wonderful explorer and big idea guy, and he asks many excellent questions that came from a place of, it was all about the power of the question with Sid, and it was inspired by Lisa Henson and I both had preschoolers at the time. We're both pretty funny comedians. They always walked around with mics like, hey, let me tell you a joke. And we were talking about how how funny that was, wouldn't it be great with our animation system? And then PBS called us and said, we're looking for a science show. We'd love to figure it out with you. And we thought, stand-up comedy and science. Well, you are asking questions, you are making people laugh. Anyway, PBS inspired us to think about the curriculum, and what we realized was there was nobody that knew anything about it for this age group. How do you teach the scientific method to preschoolers? Well, we were super lucky, because Moises Ramon, who is here and is going to join us at UCLA, was actually working on a book called Pathways to Science, and he'll talk about it, about actually how to do the very thing of teaching children the scientific method. And again, you'll see, we work with advisors who work with children. So Moises was actually on the ground floor with Sid the Science Kid, testing every single activity and experiment that you see in the show. So let's watch a little clip of Sid to remind you.
Hey, it's me, Sid. This is a roly-poly. He's a tiny little animal. He's so tiny I can't tell if he has legs. I know. A magnifying glass makes little things look much, much bigger. Can you see how he moves? Yeah, he has lots of little legs. Now that's a big discovery for Sid the Science Kid.
Just a little short story that my son Max is obsessed with roly-polies. I actually showed up at his preschool one day, and he's like, Mom, I've been observing and exploring the roly-polies, and I have them with me. And I said, where are they? He's like, they're in my underpants. And he had put like 8 of them. It was horrifying. It's like a horror movie. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Moises Ramon, who was our advisor not only on Sid the Science Kid, but many, many projects of Dinosaur Train and Doozers and all kinds of shows. But Moises is Sid. And welcome, Moises Ramon.
Right. And then we're also going to talk about Dot. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Dot?
Very quickly about Dot. Here she is on my little notebook. This is Dot. It was a picture book series created by Randy Zuckerberg. I actually was talking to some moms earlier and telling them that the book was actually put on my desk. And the first thing I saw was this little periwinkle curly haired little girl, and I was like, who's that? I love her. And then when we started to read the book, Dot was interacting with technology, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've never seen a modern child actually portray this. This is a real kid. There was a little bit of a trepidation of actually showing kids with technology. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think this may be an opportunity to actually teach kids about technology in their lives and how it can have meaning. And then I closed the book and saw that it was written by Randy Zuckerberg. And I was like, oh my God! So clearly Randy was an expert in this area. But again, we're so lucky. The Aldeals, who's a friend of the company's, who has credits a mile long, was our friend from Common Sense Media, working on her own, again, working on a curriculum that hadn't been put out there before, and working on a book called Digital Dads and Media Moms, or Media Moms and Digital Dads, she'll correct it. And we were able to work with her on creating a curriculum that was all about digital citizenship and how technology can actually enhance a kid's experience as opposed to hinder. So let's watch a little clip of Dot, and then we'll welcome Yalda. Oh, look at that face. Look at Dot.
You just need a little practice.
Coming! Astronaut path reporting. Astronaut path, you are clear for entry. Hey Dot, me, Ruby, Ned, and Deb are going to play Space Quiz of Mars.
Squid invasion? They must have found out about black calamari.
It's an augmented reality game, Dad. You put these special goggles on to play, and when you look through them, it's like you're on Mars.
It's pretty cool, actually. Want to try?
Amazing, right? Now catch the space quiz. If you want, I can give you some tips. I am the champion.
I think I'll leave this to the professionals.
Can't say you're blaming. Catching Space Quiz is slippery business. You coming, Dot?
Woohoo! I really want to, but I have to pack
about the sound. So this is Yaldiels. Here she is. And I just want to say one little thing about this particular show, Hello Cello, that I feel like Dot is always maybe a week into the future, and we were doing Pokemon Go before there was Pokemon Go. I just want to say that augmented reality thing we came up with, we're like, whoa, we're psychic.
Here's the beginning of it. Well, and let's really just jump in here. I think for our guests, you each do have a lot of personal experience in education. And I guess let's just start with the idea of how do you bring that experience to working on your respective series, if anybody wants to start us off.
Hi, I'm Yelda Ools. So several ways I have expertise working with children. At Common Sense, we have a digital citizenship curriculum that's K through 12, so I'm very familiar with that. And I have a PhD working on how media affects children. And one of my expertise is really actually talking to parents about how media affects children. So I was able to bring that to the series because there's a lot of trepidation. If those of you who have young children, you're probably scared of media and how it affects children. And so I was able to sort of bring that perspective to the show.
Well, for me, it's kind of where I grew up. I went into college at 19 years old, and I started working at a child development program. I thought I was going to be a pediatrician, so I thought I'll work with the kids before they're sick. And I have never left. I just completed 25 years working at UCLA. I started as a student teacher, and now I'm the director of one of the programs. And so it is what I do every day. It is something that I've always wanted to work with children. It takes me into a different route. And like Hallie said, a lot of what I do is just test things out. It's like Mythbusters for preschool.
Yes. Sometimes you call Moises and you're like, he's holding a baby.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's cool. I'm going to try turning my mic on and see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Oh.
The good thing is you can project. You probably know how to project.
It's off.
It's off.
Project. All right. Well, as long as yes, fine, fantastic. Well, why? Thank you, Hallie. First, I just want to say, and I'm sure this is for all of us too, that working with children, we see a lot of different types of families represented. We see a diversity in our students, but we also see diversity in how they're being raised. And so it's a real honor to be in a room filled with parents who care and are very interested in shaping what their children are learning and how they're learning it, and are devoted to making their kids better people. As teachers, we cannot thank you enough for that kind of incredible passion that you have. So, and certainly here at Henson, knowing Hallie and meeting everybody, working with everybody, any little email you get, it's from people who are kind, who are happy, who are really dedicated to working, and being on a conference call with Julie Andrews. Julie herself, if I may call her Julie, she kept bringing it back to, but what are the kids learning? But what is this doing for the kids? What are we teaching the kids? We'd be getting off on some conceptual thing, and she's like, yeah, so how is that going to help the kids? And I was so impressed with that. And certainly I was also inspired by Julie Andrews and my dear mother, who got me involved in an audition for The Sound of Music when I was a little kid. And I got to be Louisa in The Sound of Music. And I was like, someday I'm going to be Julie Andrews too, It's very exciting to kind of have life come full circle like this, Be on a conference call with Julie Andrews was really cool. But anyway, stuff that I do in the school systems for a group called PS Arts, and I work for Los Angeles City College, and I've worked at UCLA a little bit and other places in town, is we work with the VAPA standards, and that's the California Visual and Performing Arts Standards. We work with classroom teachers to bring their curriculum into the arts and to have their curriculum reflected through the arts as well. So I'll write something about the gold rush, or we'll do a song that involves math or science, you know, which I'm sure we'll be getting into more later. But it's really wonderful to be sent a script for Julie's Green Room and look at the sketches of the characters before they even came to life, and hear read the voices of the characters. And I just realized that this beautiful actress here, who was the panda, is Fizz on Julie's Green Room, and I just got all choked up over there. I was like, that's Fizz! Oh my God, I love Fizz, you know. Anyway.
Well, Johanna, let me ask you about that. When you're thinking of it in terms of the kids who are maybe coming from different backgrounds and different levels of exposure and experience to the performing arts, how do you kind of make your show or make your contribution to the learning in the show something? It seems hard to me as an outsider to make that one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So how do you solve that, or how do you address that?
You mean as far as the curriculum?
Yeah, in the learning and the curriculum.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have the target audience, and so my job was just, send the scripts and look at them and see if a kindergarten audience would respond and understand what was going on. So all I do is I do a lot of research on things, and then sometimes I'll even go into the classroom and say, hey kids, if I say this, what do you think about that? And they'll give me the feedback right then and there, and then I can go right into the computer and say, okay, well, here's the feedback I got. But I think... And then wait, just now, because I have to ask. Yeah. What happens with that feedback once it hits Hallie's desk? Because the process of it, I think, is so interesting.
We apply it. Is my mic up?
No, there's kinds of mics.
Okay. Well, we'll just pass the mic. We apply it. We give the information to the writers, producers, and we see how it can best play out creatively. I also wanted to answer what Nicole was saying. I know where she was going, that you have different kinds of kids that are coming to it. And so we try to deliver that in the creation of the characters. Diversity, and diversity is, yes, the color of skin, but also socioeconomic, physical. We have Hank, who has physical limitations in Julie's Green Room, and actually has been a breakout character. And we have a duck, very diverse. So we in other shows we'll have single parents, we'll have grandparents raising kids. We'll just set it up in all kinds of ways so that kids will feel like they see themselves. And we actually get a lot of feedback from moms and kids where they say, oh, I'm that kid. I'm Hank, or I'm Sid, or I'm Dot. So we're very conscious of that. In fact, I would actually throw it to Yalda a little bit, like in terms of technology, because again, I think that people feel that that's a privilege, technology, but in fact, it's everywhere. So I think it's important to talk about how we approach it, just in terms of how do we deliver technology to this age group.
So, one of the things that we did, so we made sure to, can you guys hear me?
Oh, let's just pass it on. Let's just keep passing the mic. It's fun.
Hello. We made sure to embed digital citizenship lessons in each episode. And digital citizenship it means that basically it's the same thing as being a citizen in the offline world. It's learning how to be kind. It's learning how to ask an adult when you need help. It's learning the rules and boundaries of the world. And these are things that apply to the online world. So, how do you communicate online? When do you ask mom for help? No tech in the bedroom. When we're outside, when do we put it away? When do we, take it out? How do we use it to explore the world and enhance our world in really positive ways? Because the whole point of the show is that technology is not something that we put away in a corner and just use, because it's in every kid's lives now. And we need to start teaching them at a very young age how to feel comfortable with it and how to use it appropriately. So that when they get to be older and teens and they're more independent, they've already learned these lessons. So we made sure to integrate it. And we also had characters that were very diverse in their approaches to technology. So Dot was very comfortable. She had a mom who's a great STEM character. She was very, very interested in science. She codes, she builds robots, and Dot's very interested. But Hal was not so interested. He was doing different kinds of things. So each character sort of had their own approach to technology as well.
Thanks for that. And speaking of different approaches, I want to talk a little bit about Sid the Science Kid, because I know that the characters on that show really approached learning in very different ways. And I thought, and I know Moises brought some show and tell. I want to make sure he gets to show us, because when we also talk about the balance between watching the show and then experiencing it in the real world. Moises has worked with us on Dinosaur Train, Splash and Bubbles, and Sid the Science Kid, and those are all PBS programs that include a fair amount of community outreach. So do you want to speak a little bit of what that looks like?
I do want to go back to the question about the diversity and what people, one of the feedback I've heard from people about Dinosaur Train is the idea that there's a child who's adopted. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a huge thing, and I've heard from a lot of people, like, they can't believe it. People, family members who have children who are adopted have come back. And so I think that's also a key thing to point out, that it hadn't been, nobody had noticed it before, and these families are out there looking for stuff, and they're coming to these shows from the Jim Henson Company. So, yeah. And part of my role as curriculum advisor, I think, doesn't just end when we review the script. It continues in the background. And I brought some props because a lot of things were worked on. This one is called Sid the Science Kid Science Camp. And one of the things that we did was develop a science camp for preschoolers to test out ways that the show could be used in the classrooms. And the research was done by an independent research group, and very good outcomes, things we already knew, but you know.
It's always good when someone else tells us.
Exactly, exactly. And so we did it in Head Start classrooms, and again, underprivileged children. We tried it in several communities, things like that. But this was a big undertaking to develop because we had to break down a show into classroom activities with taking into consideration development and appropriate practice. We're not overdoing things. Again, we also have that balance of, that kind of idea of, is, media too much? Where do we find the balance? So we were also grappling with that. It was broken down into small amounts of time, 2-3 minute clips, and then have the children go out and do activities. It was guided. It was very structured. The teachers loved it. There were so many things so many benefits that came out from it. And so I think that these are also the really great pieces of being involved with a show like this, that it continues to keep on giving. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, I have another manual that we developed, and this was a even bigger deal than this one. This was a trainer manual we developed for all the PBS stations in the country that were showing Sid the Science Kid. And what we did is we brought them in. I say we. Jim Henson Company and PBS brought them into place, and then myself and another trainer trained them on the concepts of Sid the Science Kid. And sometimes, like Nicole said, how do you teach the scientific method to a preschooler? Well, it was part of those questions a lot of people had, like, how are you doing science? Well, we've been doing it for 20-something years at UCLA since 1992, and it started with a grant we got from NASA where they were interested in, can we teach preschoolers science? And 25 years later, the answer is yes. And so this was also the question we were getting from a lot of people around the country. These concepts are too complicated. I can tell you, if anybody remembers Schoolhouse Rock and how a bill becomes a law, well, most senators and people in up there developing laws have to sing the song to remember how a bill becomes a law. And so we use that same idea into infusing science into Sid the Science Kid and teaching the really heavy science through songs, and the children learn it. And I was telling somebody a joke yesterday. My friend has to study for an anatomy exam, and she's like, I need to know all the bones. And I said, the preschoolers know them. And she said, really? I said, yeah. The other day a child fell and he said, I think I hurt my patella.
Well, let's talk about music really quickly, because certainly Julie's Green Room and Sid the Science Kid and Dinosaur Train, there's a fair amount of music in all of these shows. And I would love to hear, start with you, Hallie, a little bit about what our thinking is on where music plays, because I know we've heard a lot about vocabulary and things like that. And really, how does it serve the learning in the shows?
We'll use your mic. Well, I think that Moises just summed it up. I mean, music is one of the best ways for kids, for the learning to be sticky. I was looking up with Craig Bartlett on Dinosaur Train. How many people have actually watched Dinosaurs A through Z on YouTube? And and I love everybody raised their hand. It was over 5 million. I was like, of course. And and now all the kids, parents love that the kids can say all the dinosaur names and sound fancy. But also, what it really does is it continues. It's a celebration of joy for kids, right? Music and singing. It's wondrous and wonderful. And then if they're singing about learning, preschoolers love to learn. That's their. It's we tell the networks this. They want to learn. When networks say to us, well, we're looking for a light curriculum. We're like, why? This is all preschoolers want to do, is figure out their world. So with song, Yes, parents are loving that their kids are saying all the dinosaurs, but the kids are loving the learning and loving singing it out loud. So music's vital in all of our shows. And Sid the Science Kid, we did have our Schoolhouse Rock was our model for the Teacher Susie songs. But then, of course, we did a little nod to Mom when Sid sings I Love My Mom. And we had repeatable songs because we also know repeatable songs are really important to kids. So we do have lots of original songs in all of our shows, but then come back to the songs, the repeatable songs that kids love to sing too. Oh, take it back. Take it back.
Taking it back. I just want to, just so I know, so we allow time, do people have questions? Are there any questions out here? A few? Okay, so I just want to account for that. So yes, so along those lines, I guess, Julie's green room music, we saw in the clip certainly about acting, but, when you're working with, again, characters themselves that are small, how does music really help serve both the story, the characters, and for Julie's green room?
Oh yeah, excuse me. I was going to say that there's this huge push to try to have music, have the arts and the sciences and collaborate in teaching. But really, when you think about it, it's been that way for years and years and years and years. Look at the ABC song. I mean, that's how we learned the alphabet, is through the ABC song. And I'll go into kindergarten rooms and see their teachers teaching them just the regular, the months of the year, the days of the week, or whatever. There's always a song to it. So it's fantastic, this sticky learning. I love that term. It really does stick in their heads. Mm-hmm. And singing also is a way for the entire group of children to participate in something. So they're all using their voices. They're all repeating the information they need.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm mindful of our schedule, but I wanted to just jump over back to Dot for just a moment. When we think about, you touched on some of the key issues here, I'm going to ask the question that maybe other people are thinking. What is the number one thing I need to know for my kid and his tech as I watch them squirrel away under their covers with their iPhones and their iPods? What is the greatest tip or advice that you would want parents to know?
Well, the number one thing is watch your own behavior, role modeling. And we did a poll at Common Sense Media where we asked parents how much time they use media, and we also did one for teenagers. Teenagers use media 9 hours a day outside of school. So do parents. There's a very high correlation between what kids do and what parents do. So the number one rule is watch your own behavior. And then really the number one rule is, be proactive. Educate yourself. My book, Media Moms and Digital Dads, gives a lot of the research. Some of it we did at UCLA, the social science research that really sort of tells you that kids are fine. They are not using these stuff and destroying their brains, but parents still need to get involved. So those are the two things that I would emphasize.
Thank you for that. And Hannah?
I just want to say one thing else too, that DOT isn't always just about balance of technology and activity outside of it. One of the things that we keep emphasizing, and I would think this would add on to Yalda about technology, is really be attuned to your kids' passion and what they're interested in, and see how technology can deepen the passion. So that's what we've been doing. We show different examples with all the characters, whether Ruby, her friend who's into filmmaking, or Dot is into starting her own entrepreneurial business, or Hal has an idea for a show. We show how technology, and different kinds of technology, not just, we have drones, we have all kinds of robots, we have all kinds of things, deepen their passion, and that's really important.
I think my last question to the panel is, what kind of feedback have you gotten from parents about the show? Have you met any fans? I have had some really funny experiences myself out in the world wearing my Jim Henson jacket. You always find a fan. What kind of response have you had to...
Well, I can start it, and I have a story of a grandma. And oftentimes we're having children who are being raised by grandparents and things like that. I was doing a presentation in Washington with PBS and the National Association for Education of Young Children, and there was a lady sitting in the front, and she came up at the end, and she said, "I'm so excited to talk to you guys, I just have to tell you the story." my grandson watches Sid every day. And one day, I'm not in the room, I'm getting lunch ready, and he calls me and he's like, "Grandma, your show's on." and one of the things that we found in Sid the Science Kid was that there was a lot of the research that was done by PBS was that it was the highest co-viewed show of children's television at that time, that it was being viewed by adults as much as the children. And we had that idea in mind when we were doing a lot of things to also help the parents continue the learning outside of watching the television. So the grandma that was her show.
That's very
I guess the thing that I've heard the most, Common Sense, by the way, gave it a Common Sense Family Seal, which is our highest honor. It got 5 stars. I had nothing to do with it, I swear. I really didn't, because we have separation of church and state. This was the show. But the main thing that I've heard is, oh my goodness, this girl feels like me. This world feels like the world I live in. Technology is part of kids' lives. And, often in television content, we try to keep it out for very young kids, and I understand why, but you're also not reflecting the world they live in. So this show really reflects the world kids live in.
I just wanted to go off of what Hallie was saying about the diversity of the characters that Henson Company creates. I have one of my roommates works in the backstage of the theater, behind the scenes work, and so she watched an episode of Julie's Green Room and said, well, I really like Riley, the character of Riley, because she doesn't necessarily always want to be on stage in front of people. She likes to do the backstage stuff too and be on the camera and this and that. So anyway, I think it appeals to many different types of people, and Henson Company does a really great job of making it so diverse for every child.
So I want to make sure we have time for questions. I think there was one over here. Yeah, I think if you speak loudly, we will hear you.
You mentioned the science camp curriculum. Do you have any of that that's available, like let's say parents are homeschooling preschool, so they can have access to that, so we go with a certain episode and they can do a science project on their own?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of what we did for Sid the Science Kid is actually on the website, on the PBS website. I believe it's still up. And what we did was, the intent was that even if you watched a show and you didn't quite get the experiment or the learning that we were trying, that you could go to the website, and we developed kind of like, I don't like to call them recipes, but that's a kind of way to put it, the how-to, and then what the learning would happen. And a lot of those, like Hallie was saying, I was testing them at UCLA, and even before I worked on the show, I had been testing a lot of stuff. What we always strive to do is not to teach children you have to buy things to engage in things. So a lot of the stuff that we did was just using stuff we already have and things like that. So we would do, measuring with Legos, and we just put, this, the room is 1,000 Legos long, and things like that, so that you wouldn't have to go out and do things, common things, a lot of recyclables, a lot of things like that, very attainable. Again, the other thing that we thought about was similar to what we've done at UCLA with developing a curriculum that is independent of, all the other things like geography, topography, all those things that get in the way, like, well, you can do that because you guys are in California. We developed a lot of things that would also be thinking about that you didn't have to live in a high-rise building, or you had to live in a lush background where you had the forest or things like that. We developed things that could be done in multiple places.
And I'll just add to that, I think all of the shows that we're talking about today, they have online activities and activity pages. Specifically, I know for Sid the Science Kid, every episode has a lesson that goes with it that has been tried and tested in the classroom, and they're available. And I also, just because Moises didn't mention this, the curriculum that started with Sid the Science Kid became the science curriculum in Hillsborough County Schools in Florida, and is their pre-K science curriculum. It is a really tried and true, well-developed program. Yeah.
And on just a kind of on a funny note for somebody who's helping their children at home, there's a lot of really great things. Like on the website, there's the rotting sandwich, and so you can take it. There's motion capture. You could take the sandwich and you could scroll the days, and you could see how the sandwich rots over 14, 15 days or something like that. So there's some really fun.
And I worked on that, and they really did use a sandwich and let it rot. It was nasty. Are there other questions? Yeah, right here.
I know you guys talk a lot about diversity. I have a preschooler, and I'm new to the hub. And I was wondering, as a mother of a biracial child, how do you incorporate multiracial families into your program?
Well, Sid is biracial. So, I mean, so Sid is right there. I think that when we have characters who are humans versus dinosaurs and doozers, we make every effort to have different characters be biracial. But Sid himself, mom is African American, dad is Caucasian, he's also Jewish. So that was a first. We felt like we know that was a first in preschool, so we were really proud of it. Why that feels a little bit different is because it has a kind of Muppety look to it, right? So Sid is blue hair and yellow skin, and so it wasn't as clear as the characters in Julie's Green Room are. So the characters in Julie's Green Room have all kinds of diverse backgrounds as well, but it's something that we all need to endeavor to keep doing in children's television. 100% constantly when we're using real human kids, and hopefully we'll see more of it in everyone's program, but certainly in ours it's first and foremost in our minds.
I mean, my job was to read the scripts and make sure that we were communicating on two levels to the children, about safe digital practices, and to the adults as well. So that's what my focus was, and I would read the scripts, and there was no identification as to what race or color or what these characters were. But when Dot was created, it is such a diverse cast, and they really did an amazing job. So I was surprised when I actually saw the first episode. I was like, wow, they really pay attention to this, and they did an amazing job.
Thank you. Oh yeah, right here.
Me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going on with the sticky learning and digital citizenship and how Sid was actually watched by both kids and adults. Has it ever been considered to do an adult program, especially for like my age group where I grew up, with Jim Henson? And I could certainly use digital citizenship. A lot of people I know could use digital citizenship.
I'm going to have you write me an email that I can put in a pitch to the networks about how moms need this kind of programming. It's all about what the networks are looking for, but here's the great news. We have the Henson Family Hub, so we're going to start to create a lot of new content specifically talking to parents, because we saw, again, we're always thinking forward. What's missing? And what's missing is programming for parents, for sure. Celebrating the parenthood experience, but also giving tools, meaningful tools. So all of our shows, and you'll hear about this when we have our creators come up, every single one we talk about the tool bag for moms and dads in the show. What are the tools they can take away? A lot of that is music, sometimes activities in Sid the Science Kid, but we'll talk more about that too. But I know what you mean. You want a show for you. I get it. We want it too.
We all do.
Yeah. Or the mean moms too. Like
I'm on it.
The mean moms.
Thank you.
Mean moms, great moms, helicopter moms, stealth moms.
Yeah, right here.
Do we really email you if we have ideas?
Oh no, I meant email. Like I want more. I want more. If you go on to Henson Family Hub and say we want more for moms, we'll hear you.
Okay, so you guys do check it out and you'll read it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think there was another question here. Go ahead.
Yeah, you just touched on it a second ago, but I'd love to know, when you read the scripts, can you kind of tell us some of the things that you look for that maybe need to be revised or added to or taken away?
In terms of the learning?
In terms of the learning, what are you guys looking for?
Okay, I can start. So, I touched on it. So I was really looking for, okay, where do I know there are buttons here, and where a parent might feel a little uncomfortable, or the technology was not developmentally appropriate, or if we could embed a digital citizenship lesson, like keep the tech out of the bedroom, ask for passwords, things like that. I was very, very conscious. Randy, one of the reasons we were so far ahead of the curve with the AR is because Randy Zuckerberg was the creator, and she is the tech leader. She's got her finger on the pulse of the tech. I was looking for, okay, I know we're going to have great tech integrated into this, but where can we figure out what's appropriate for the kids, and what are the sort of pain points for the parents that I can help us address within this, within the narrative?
I can tell you that from the series that I've worked on,
I get brought on from when they're even thinking about the characters. And so having that advantage of, like, you know, we talked about the diversity of Sid. You know, I was on the show before it was called Sid the Science Kid. It was called What's the Big Idea? And, you know, sitting there looking at sketches and thinking, you know, May should be Asian, Gabriela should be Latina, you know, all these things that, you know, we're going to make the child have. So it starts from even just the development of the character that you're sending those messages in the learning. And so that's part of where my role is to, like, say, you know, okay, developmentally appropriate, are kids gonna, you know, are kids really gonna look at that? And then I would say, here's the reasons why, and here's the story why. And so sitting around with the writers and the creators and everything, that really helps me to see where it's going, and also to say, I'm sorry, I gotta stop the conversation right there. That's not appropriate for these reasons. We don't say that for these reasons. And sometimes, not to insult the writers, Craig's right here in the front, it's really funny, but it'll resonate differently for children, you know. And I'll tell you a story, just kind of my own learning. As a teacher, I try to watch what I say, and when you say things to children, they're very literal. So children are helping me clean up, and they're like, "Teacher, where do we put it?" "Just throw it in the corner." Guess what happened? They walked over with all the boxes, and they threw them in the corner, and everything shattered. I mean, it was, you know, stuff. Everything went everywhere, and then I just thought, thank you. And I was like, you know, because exactly what we say, you know, words mean things, and children are figuring out exactly where the details are going to be, and that impact is huge. The other part that I play also is to challenge on the other side, the underestimation of children, right? That we do not think they can learn things. And there's so much research now that tells us that what we believed about children, you know, 30, 40 years ago is what the research that's being used still. But there's new research that's not being looked at. There's a lady out of Berkeley, her name is Alison Gopnik, and she has these 2 books that I really refer to. One is called The Scientist in the Crib, and the other one's called The Philosophical Baby. And what we believe about babies and children from, you know, our ancient friends, Piaget, Vygotsky, all these theorists on child development, isn't what is actually now true because of things like technology and things that never were accounted for. And so children are doing things. I'm having babies who are walking, you know, around 9 months. Why? Because they're in preschool where they're seeing children do things. Children are talking, you know, complicated language, things like that. I sat there with a 4-year-old who bumped into somebody while she was running, and she came to me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, my trajectory hit me up against him, and I ricocheted, and, you know, she used all these, and my momentum."
She's learning science.
And it wasn't something I can't take credit, we were teaching that part, but her dad is a physicist. And so momentum, you know, all those kind of things, you know, and this just happened, you know, about 6 months ago.
Oh my God, I forgot what I was going to say because that was so funny. Oh, great.
Oh, wait,
well, I was just going to say, to answer your question, when I go through the scripts, it's just about age appropriateness. And one of the first scripts I saw was the Alec Baldwin script, and it was awesome. But it's true that adults learn things differently and are capable of broader concepts than a kindergarten child. And so where you might be thinking about, you know, emotional recall and, you know, the truth within it and being in the moment, you know, they can't even look each other in the eye, you know. It's like, come on. So we talk about body, voice, and imagination and sort of bring things from there and let things spring from there. So that's what I do.
I'm laughing because that was a key moment with Johanna. Because, like, literally, Julie was like, well, let's teach them about getting in touch with their character. And we were like, oh my gosh, we just have to get them to learn to just stand there. And like we were like, thank God Johanna articulated in such a wonderful way that we didn't have to teach them method acting to preschoolers. But, you know, I just want to say about all 3 of these amazing advisors, it's true. We at Henson, the education, it's the heart and DNA of the show, and what the creators bring are the stories that they've dreamed of telling, and the 2 hold hand in hand. So sometimes we hear from networks they want big E, entertainment, little e, education. We're like, we want 2 big E's. And so all of these wonderful folks are there from the very beginning in the brainstorming of shows. So Moises is correct. It'll permeate character. So when we'll talk about Dinosaur Train and Word Party. It'll start to inform, like, well, if this character, how do they relate to the curriculum? It's not that these folks just come in and read scripts, which is true at some places, but at our company, they're there from the beginning brainstorming, and with Moises on Sid the Science Kid, it was even the scientific concepts, we broke them down to like, there's going to be a week on simple machines. There's going to be a week on physics. There's going to be a week on growth. And so then we would work backwards and say, okay, well then what's the question? So decay, the question became, why is my banana so mushy? But we started first, and the writers and Moises were in the room. It was really fun. I have to say, it is really fun. And so we make sure that our creators and writers have a great relationship with our educators too, that they don't feel put upon, that they're in it together.
I think we have time for a couple more. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, and one of the things we were looking at kindergarten, and when I was visiting all the different rooms, one of the teachers said, it's really great that these kids have iPads and touchscreen, but we're still trying to teach them how to use a mouse, because the things that they're seeing on television are honestly, they're more advanced, and they're missing some steps. So I guess my question is, do you guys notice, or are you seeing, or are parents looking for that in-between step to get them to the next level?
I would, from where I sit, I see a lot of the programming involving readiness, where we're doing science readiness, and in the case of, Splash and Bubbles, for example, we're talking about environmental readiness. And certainly in some of the cases here, it's the introduction, it's that first step. And I don't know if people want to add to that, but that's, certainly for Sid the Science Kid, the conversation was, we're not looking to have kids, build a lab in their kitchen as much as set the groundwork for that.
And I think it was intentional also that we were using those words like an early introduction, early scientist or things like that, so that we could also, not be held to the scientific method. I can tell you I've done the scientific method for 1 year with preschoolers. Really boring, not really fun. But we tried it because I wanted to be able to say it doesn't work. And so what we did was tweak and adapt some of that, and where it was appropriate we used some of those pieces, but also not to insult the scientists, right? That, yes, we are a science show, but we aren't, so that we allows us some wiggle room, and as my friend would say, some weasel words that we can kind of get out of some of things, because we would say an early introduction. At UCLA, we say we're a science-based program. That way it helps us also to have some freedom we're based on science, but we're not saying we're doing true science, because sometimes as true scientists, sometimes we're making mistakes. And as we found out, there's also sometimes a lot of disagreement in science. So.
Yeah, I think that's a real concern. In teaching, we call it rubricing, right? When we have a little step that leads to another little step you can't just pull yourself up onto a tall platform. So it's a real concern that I think everybody's aware of.
You hold on to it.
Oh,
I'm going to throw out to Sarah Mazes, who's our VP of Children's Entertainment and oversees DOT. I think that on DOT, I'm not sure we ever showed a mouse. You would know if you remember, but I do know that we always tried to reflect the modern world. So all types of technology. And what Randy Zuckerberg taught me was there are more mobile phones in the world than toilets. So if you take that fact in your head, it means that technology's like permeated the world for this age group, but most certainly it's all kinds of technology. So the mouse in that particular classroom in school and what they have available is what they're going to need to use. Just like at home, perhaps all we have at my home is a laptop. And maybe at your home, all you have is a mobile phone. So technology comes in all kinds of different ways, and I think that we celebrate that in DOT. And Sarah's nodding her head. Yes, somewhere there is a mouse in DOT.
There's actually, we show the little arrow moving, but one of the things that we wanted to do is we try and think, as you've taught me, as I've learned from Hallie, we're thinking about down the road in this series in a few years, and technology changes so quickly. So how do we show technology that feels relevant, but that will also be 5 minutes into the future? And so we want to use technology or make choices visually that will still feel relevant when the kids watch it. So it's not so much about learning to use a mouse, But what we did want to show is, and something that we've seen in research, I remember when Yalda, you brought out in our first pitch meeting, oh my God, there was this video about kids and technology, and it was toddlers, like 1-year-old, tapping on a magazine.
Yeah, iPad baby, yeah.
And they're like, why isn't this
and
working?
going like this.
I don't understand. They're like swiping, and they're, and that was a very big aha moment. And so that was a big piece that you brought that really laid the groundwork for how we were going to show technology.
Yeah.
So we don't get in tight and close, because in a year or two, it's not going to be relevant. There won't be a mouse. It'll be like, we don't know. Like with Hello Cello, who would have known that that game would have turned, like, that Pokemon Go would have been? We would have never known.
Yalda, do you have a comment?
I was just going to say, though, it is true that keyboarding is something, I'm not so sure about a mouse, but keyboarding is something that kids eventually need to learn. And iPads and especially phones, lower income families, often that's the only technology they have in their house, so they don't come to the classroom knowing keyboarding, and that's a skill. We should think about that, I think, for moving forward in the next episode.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, again, back to the idea of underestimating children. In child development, we called it scaffolding, and the idea that you're using things to get to the higher level. I can tell you that there's a man, and this is not a pitch, I don't know him. He has a TED Talk, and his name is, I'm trying to remember his name, but he's got this thing called School in the Clouds. And he talks about how he puts a computer out in India, and it's in English, it's in Windows, and he leaves it there, and in 2 weeks the children are at the proficiency of an administrative assistant in the United States.
Oh my wow.
And so I'll remember his name, and I'll
Well, along those lines, we're going to take our break. I think we're going to wrap this up.